The chamber was silent except for the low hum of the translation devices. Commander Vekrin stood at the center of the circular room, his blue-scaled hands gripping the edge of the podium. Around him sat the representatives of 12 alien species, each one wearing the same expression of defeat. The holographic display above them showed the latest reports, and every single one painted the same picture. The galaxy was dying. The Chromari swarm had taken another system. 4 billion souls lost in less than a week. Vekrin remembered when such losses would have sparked outrage and immediate military response. Now it was just another day, another tally mark on the list of failures. The Althari had once been the greatest warriors in the known galaxy, but even his people had been reduced to nothing more than refugees running from one safe zone to another. Counselor Miras of the Zenith species shifted in her floating chair. Her large black eyes reflected the red warning lights from the display. She was telepathic like all her kind, and Vekrin knew she could feel the despair radiating from every person in the room. The Zenith had tried to use their mental powers against the Chromari hive mind, but it had been like shouting into a hurricane. The swarm simply had too many voices, too many thoughts, all screaming with one purpose: consume, grow, spread. Vekrin cleared his throat and began speaking. His voice was tired, the voice of someone who had given the same speech too many times. He talked about defensive positions and resource allocation. He mentioned the evacuation of the Pelion colonies and the reinforcement of the Outer Rim territories. Everyone listened because they had to, but nobody believed any of it would make a difference. They had tried everything: new weapons, new strategies, new alliances. Nothing worked. The Chromari just kept coming. When Vekrin finished, silence filled the chamber again. It was Miras who finally spoke up. Her voice was soft but clear, translated into each species' language by the devices they all wore. She said there was one option they had not tried, one weapon they had locked away 300 years ago. She said it was time to talk about the humans. The reaction was immediate. Half the council members started talking at once. Horvath of the Krell slammed his massive fist on his desk, cracking the metal surface. He said the humans were dangerous, that they could not be controlled. Ambassador Tillax of the Merchants Guild reminded everyone what happened during the contact wars. The humans had nearly destroyed 4 separate species before the council managed to contain them. Vekrin raised his hand for silence. He knew this reaction would come. He had the same concerns. 3 centuries ago, humanity had just discovered faster-than-light travel. They were young, aggressive, and completely unaware of galactic politics. The council had sent peaceful envoys expecting the usual process of integration. Instead, the humans had responded with suspicion and violence. The war had lasted only 5 years, but those 5 years had shown the galaxy something terrifying. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not follow the established rules of engagement. They used tactics that were considered dishonorable or insane by galactic standards. They sent ships on suicide runs. They used weapons in ways they were never designed to be used. They fought with a creativity and ruthlessness that made even the Althari uncomfortable. When the council finally managed to surround Earth, they faced a choice: exterminate humanity or find another solution. The Zenith had suggested the temporal stasis field, freeze the entire solar system in time. The humans would not die, but they would not be a threat either. It was supposed to be temporary, a pause while the galaxy figured out what to do with this dangerous new species. But temporary had become 300 years. Miras continued speaking. She said the Chromari were different from anything the galaxy had ever faced. Traditional warfare was not working. The swarm adapted too quickly, reproduced too fast, and had no fear of death. They needed someone who thought differently, someone who did not follow the rules because they did not know the rules existed. They needed the humans. Vekrin found himself nodding slowly. He pulled up a file on his personal display, one he had been reviewing for weeks. It was the testimony of Kelvin Hayes, the human ambassador who had tried to negotiate peace before the contact wars. The man had been eloquent and intelligent, trying desperately to make the council understand his species. There was one recording that Vekrin had watched dozens of times. He played it for the council now. The hologram showed a middle-aged human male with gray hair and tired eyes. Hayes spoke about human history, about how his species had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that spanned their entire planet. He said humans were born into a world that tried to kill them every single day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. Earth was a harsh teacher, and it had created a harsh species. But that harshness came with something else. Humans did not give up. They could not give up. It was not in their nature. The recording ended with Hayes making a simple statement. He said that if the galaxy ever faced something truly dangerous, something that could not be reasoned with or defended against using normal means, they should remember that humans specialized in surviving the impossible. The chamber was quiet after the recording ended. Vekrin looked at each council member in turn. He said they all knew the situation was hopeless. Every simulation they ran ended the same way. The Chromari would consume the remaining civilized systems within 50 years. Maybe less. They could keep running, keep fighting, but the end was already written. Horvath asked the obvious question. What made them think the humans would even help? The council had frozen them in time and left them there for 3 centuries. Why would they fight for the species that had imprisoned them? Miras answered. She said humans were also protectors. They formed bonds with others easily, even with former enemies. If they could make the humans understand the stakes, understand that billions of innocent lives were at risk, they would fight, not for the council, but for the people who needed help. It was another strange human trait. They could hate you and still die to save you. The vote took hours. Arguments flew back and forth. Some council members wanted to find another way, any other way. Others pointed out that there was no other way left. They had tried everything else. This was the last choice they had. In the end, the vote passed by a single vote. The order was given to deactivate the temporal stasis field around Earth's solar system. Teams were dispatched to prepare first contact protocols. Messages were written and rewritten, trying to find the right words to ask for help from a species they had wronged. Vekrin stood alone in the chamber after everyone else had left. He looked at the star charts on the display, at the red zones that marked Chromari territory. The red covered more than half the galaxy now. Soon it would be everything. He thought about the humans waking up after 300 years. They would be confused and angry. They would demand answers. And then they would see what the galaxy had become in their absence. Would they help? Would they even care? Or would they look at the Council's failure and decide that the galaxy deserved what it got? Vekrin did not know. Nobody knew. But they were about to find out. The message was ready. The stasis field would deactivate in 72 hours. After that, everything would change. For better or worse, the humans were coming back. Captain Lucas Grant was in the middle of explaining a tactical formation when every screen in the command center went white. The sudden brightness made everyone shield their eyes. Lucas stepped back from the holographic display, his hand instinctively moving to the sidearm at his hip. Around him, the other officers of the Earth Defense Force were frozen in place, staring at the screens. Then the voice came through. It spoke in perfect English, but there was something off about it. The tone was too measured, too precise. It said that it was transmitting on behalf of the Galactic Council. It said that Earth had been in temporal stasis for 300 years. It said that the galaxy needed help. Lucas felt his stomach drop. 300 years. The words did not make sense. He had been standing here 5 minutes ago, discussing defense patterns for the Mars orbital stations. Now some alien voice was telling him that centuries had passed. He looked at his second officer, Lieutenant Commander Rachel Price. She looked as shocked as he felt. The message continued. It explained that a threat called the Chromari Swarm was consuming the galaxy. It said that traditional methods had failed. It said that humanity's unique perspective and tactics were needed. It asked very politely if Earth would be willing to help. Then the voice stopped and the screens returned to normal. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then every communication channel exploded at once. Calls were coming in from every military base, every government office, every ship in orbit. Everyone had received the same message. Everyone was asking the same questions. Lucas immediately opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. General Amy Rodriguez appeared on his screen. She was in her 60s, one of the veterans from the contact wars. Lucas had served under her back then, when he was just a young lieutenant learning how to fight against species that had technology centuries ahead of Earth. Rodriguez had gray hair now and lines around her eyes, but those eyes were still sharp. She told Lucas to hold his position and maintain alert status. She said President Helen Morris was calling an emergency session within the hour. Until they knew more, everyone needed to stay calm and ready. Lucas acknowledged and cut the channel. He looked around at his crew. They were scared. Hell, he was scared. 300 years frozen in time. It sounded like something from a bad science fiction movie. President Morris addressed the world 2 hours later. She stood in the White House briefing room, flanked by her military advisors and Chief of Staff Greg Palmer. She confirmed that the message was real. She explained that Earth and the entire solar system had been placed in a temporal stasis field after the contact wars. To everyone on Earth, no time had passed. But outside, the galaxy had moved forward without them. The president's voice was steady as she laid out what they knew. The Galactic Council had frozen Earth because they considered humans too dangerous. Now that same council was asking for help because they were losing a war. She said that initial scans showed the alien message was telling the truth. There was a massive conflict happening across the galaxy. Entire civilizations were being destroyed. The reaction from Earth was immediate and divided. Protests erupted in major cities. People held signs demanding isolation. Why should humanity help the aliens who had imprisoned them? Others argued that innocent lives were at stake. Children and families were dying out there. Could Earth really stand by and do nothing? Lucas watched the news feeds from his quarters that night. He could not sleep. His mind kept going back to the contact wars. He remembered the first time he had seen an Althari warship up close. It had been beautiful and terrifying, covered in weapons that could level cities. He remembered losing friends to alien plasma fire. He remembered the day the Council fleet surrounded Earth and gave humanity a choice. Surrender or die, they had surrendered. What choice did they have? And then the stasis field had activated. Lucas remembered that moment too. 1 second he had been standing on the observation deck of the command station, watching the alien ships. The next second those same ships were still there, but everything felt different. Now he knew why. General Rodriguez called a meeting of all senior military staff the next morning. Lucas attended via secure video link. Rodriguez got straight to the point. She said the council had sent detailed information about the Chromari threat. She pulled up images that made Lucas lean closer to his screen. The Chromari were insectoid, but calling them insects felt wrong. They were massive creatures, each one the size of a shuttlecraft. They traveled in swarms that numbered in the millions. The general explained that the Chromari operated as a hive mind. They had no individuals, no personalities, no ability to negotiate. They existed only to consume and reproduce. Every world they conquered was stripped bare and converted into breeding grounds for more Chromari. She showed casualty reports. Billions dead, trillions if you counted the losses over the past 2 centuries. Colonel Jake Bennett spoke up. He had fought alongside Lucas during the contact wars. He asked the question everyone was thinking. Why should they trust the Council? They had frozen Earth in time and left humanity there for 300 years. What guarantee did they have that this was not another trick? Rodriguez said there was no guarantee, but she had reviewed all the intelligence data. The threat was real. If the Chromari reached Earth, humanity would not survive. The swarm did not care about politics or history. They would consume Earth just like they had consumed hundreds of other worlds. Chief of Staff Palmer appeared on the screens. He said that President Morris was considering the Council's request. But if Earth was going to fight, it would be on human terms. They would not be servants or pawns. They would be full partners with equal say in strategy and tactics. The Council would have to accept that or find another solution. Over the next week, Earth underwent the fastest militarization in human history. Factories that had been idle were reactivated. Shipyards worked around the clock. The Council had sent technological specifications for faster-than-light drives and energy weapons. Human engineers tore through the designs with desperate intensity. Dr. Victor Chen led the Weapons Research Division. He was a thin man with nervous energy and a mind that never stopped working. He stood in front of a massive alien plasma cannon that the Council had provided as a sample. His team had been studying it for 3 days. Victor pointed out that the weapon was incredibly advanced but also incredibly inefficient. The aliens had designed it to last forever and never fail. Humans would have designed it to hit harder and worry about longevity later. Dr. Lisa Murphy ran the propulsion research team. She had backgrounds in both physics and engineering. She looked at the faster-than-light drive specifications and immediately saw ways to improve them. The alien designs were safe and tested over centuries. Human modifications would be faster and riskier. She started drafting new plans immediately. Admiral Christine Ford was given command of the 1st Expeditionary Force. She was a no-nonsense woman who had risen through the ranks by being smarter and tougher than everyone around her. She stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, the newest carrier in Earth's fleet. The ship had been built in record time using both human and alien technology. It was not pretty, but it was functional. Lucas received his assignment on a Tuesday morning. He was being promoted to commander and given control of a tactical strike group. His orders were simple: join the Defiance and prepare to enter Galactic Council space. They would be heading to the front lines. He packed his belongings and said goodbye to Earth. He did not know if he would see it again. As his shuttle lifted off, Lucas looked down at the blue marble that was home. 300 years had passed out there, but for him, it had been just a few weeks since the contact wars ended. Now he was going back out into the galaxy. But this time, humanity would not be fighting alone. This time, they would show the galaxy what humans could really do when they fought for something that mattered. The USS Defiance left Earth orbit with a fleet of 20 ships. It was a small force compared to the massive armadas the Council commanded. But Admiral Ford stood on her bridge and felt confident. She had served in the contact wars. She knew what human ingenuity could accomplish. The galaxy had asked for help. They were about to get more than they bargained for. As the fleet jumped to faster than light speed, Earth grew smaller behind them. Ahead lay the unknown: war, death, and an enemy that had brought the galaxy to its knees. But humanity had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages and world wars and diseases that should have wiped them out. They were still here. And now they were going to teach the galaxy a lesson. Never count out the humans. General Amy Rodriguez stood in the Joint Operations Center surrounded by holographic displays showing star systems across half the galaxy. Human volunteers were arriving every day now, and Council species were requesting training in human combat tactics. The victory at Belleron had changed everything. For the first time in decades, the galaxy believed they could win this war. Rodriguez had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Allied Forces just 3 weeks after Belleron. It was the first time a human had held such a position, and she felt the weight of it every moment. Beside her stood Commander Vecrin, now her second in command. The Althari warrior had gone from skeptical ally to devoted partner. He had watched humans fight and decided he wanted to learn everything they knew, Captain. Ryan Mitchell entered the operations center with Dr. Sophie Blake. Ryan commanded a covert operations unit that specialized in missions nobody else wanted. Sophie was a xenobiologist who had been studying the Kromari since Earth joined the war. They had information, and from the looks on their faces, it was important. Sophie pulled up a holographic image of a Kromari bioship. She had been dissecting specimens from the Battle of Belleron for weeks. What she found changed everything they knew about the swarm. She explained that every Kromari creature was connected to a hive mind, but that connection was not distributed equally. There were nodes, central points that coordinated large sections of the swarm. She called them queen nodes. Ryan stepped forward and expanded the display. He showed reconnaissance images from Kromari-occupied worlds. On each conquered planet, buried deep underground, there was a massive structure. The structures were organic, grown rather than built. Inside each one was a queen node, a creature the size of a city block that controlled millions of bioships. Ryan said if they could destroy a queen node, every Kromari connected to it would lose coordination. They would become mindless drones, easy to eliminate. Vecrin studied the images carefully. He asked the obvious question: how were they supposed to reach these queen nodes? The structures were protected by millions of Kromari warriors. Every approach would be defended. It would take an entire fleet to fight through, and by the time they reached the target, the Kromari would have relocated the queen node. Ryan smiled. He said they would not use a fleet. They would use a small team. Fast insertion, hit the target, and get out before the swarm knew what happened. It was insane by Council Standa. Hers, it was exactly the kind of plan humans excelled at. Rodriguez listened to the proposal. She did not like it. The casualty projections were brutal. Anyone going on this mission had a very low chance of coming back. But she also knew Ryan was right. If they could prove the tactic worked, they could start targeting queen nodes across Kromari territory. It could turn the entire war around. She approved the mission. Ryan was given authorization to assemble his team. He put out a call for volunteers and was not surprised when every human in the fleet stepped forward. He chose carefully. He needed people who could fight. think fast, and adapt to changing situations. He also needed people who understood they might not be coming home. Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Webb was the first person Ryan selected. Aaron was a combat veteran who had survived more missions than anyone had a right to. He was in his 40s, older than most field officers, with gray starting to show in his short hair. He had a reputation for being calm under pressure and for never leaving anyone behind. Corporal Danny Rush joined the team next. Danny was an explosives expert who could build a bomb out of almost anything. He was young and had an easy smile that made people underestimate him. That was usually a mistake. Danny understood explosives better than most people understood their own families. Captain Megan Foster was their pilot. She had flown everything from fighters to heavy transports and had a gift for getting out of situations that should have been fatal. She was quiet and focused, the kind of person who let her skills do the talking. Lieutenant Sam Porter rounded out the core team. Sam handled intelligence and communications. He could hack alien systems, decrypt enemy transmissions, and had a mind that worked 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He was nervous by nature, always worrying about what could go wrong, which made him perfect for planning operations. The surprise addition to the team was Curvin, a young Althari warrior who had fought at Belleron. He had watched humans fight and wanted to learn what courage meant to them. Aaron was skeptical about bringing an alien on a human strike team, but Curvin proved himself during training. He was fast, strong, and willing to take risks that made other Althari uncomfortable. The target was a planet called Draken 4. It had been a mining colony before the Kromari took it. Now it was a breeding ground for bioships. Reconnaissance showed a queen node buried 2 miles beneath the surface. The structure was defended by an estimated 5 million Kromari warriors. The team would be going in with 5 people and whatever equipment they could carry. They launched in a stealth ship designed by Lisa Murphy's team. It used a combination of human and alien technology to avoid detection. The ship was small, cramped, and barely armed. Its only advantage was that it could slip past Kromari sensor nets that would catch larger vessels. The insertion went wrong immediately. A Kromari patrol ship appeared on their approach vector. Megan tried to evade, but the patrol ship adjusted course to intercept. Sam worked frantically at the communication station, trying to jam the patrol ship's signals before it could alert the swarm. He was too slow. The patrol ship transmitted for 3 seconds before Megan destroyed it with the stealth ship's only weapon. 3 seconds was enough. The swarm knew something was coming. Aaron made the decision to proceed anyway. They had come too far to turn back now. Megan brought the stealth ship in hard and fast, dropping through Dracon 4's atmosphere at speeds that made the hull glow red. She crashed them into a canyon 20 miles from the target location. The landing was rough but controlled. Everyone survived. They moved out immediately. The planet's surface was covered in Kromari structures, organic towers that pulsed with sickly light. Bioships filled the sky in formations that blocked out the sun. The team stayed low, using the terrain for cover. They had 12 hours to reach the Queen node, plant the explosives, and get back to the extraction point. The clock started the moment they left the crashed ship. The first contact with Kromari warriors came after 2 miles. A patrol of 6 creatures stumbled onto their position. Aaron opened fire first, his rifle tearing through chitin armor. Curvin moved with surprising speed, his energy blade cutting down 2 Kromari before they could react. The fight was over in seconds, but the damage was done. The patrol had transmitted their location before dying. The swarm came after them. Thousands of Kromari warriors poured across the landscape. Aaron led the team into a network of underground tunnels, old mining shafts from before the invasion. The tunnels were dark and cramped, but they provided cover. The team moved as fast as they dared, always aware of the sounds of pursuit behind them. Danny planted charges as they went, small explosives rigged to collapse the tunnels behind them. Each charge bought them a few more minutes. It would not be enough to stop the swarm, but it would slow them down. Sam monitored the Kromari communications, listening to the hive mind coordinate the hunt. He provided updates on enemy positions, helping Aaron navigate through gaps in the search pattern. They reached the Queen node chamber after 8 hours of running and fighting. The cavern was enormous, stretching away into darkness in all directions. In the center sat the Queen node itself. The creature was massive beyond comprehension, a mountain of flesh and chitin that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Thousands of organic cables connected it to the walls, floor, and ceiling. This was the heart of the swarm on Draken 4. Danny immediately began setting up the charges. He needed time to do it right, time to make sure the explosion would destroy the entire structure. Aaron, Kervin, and Megan set up a defensive perimeter. Sam worked on jamming the Queen Node's communications, trying to prevent it from calling for more defenders. The Chromari came in waves. They poured into the cavern from every entrance, countless warriors all focused on protecting their queen. Aaron's rifle ran dry. He switched to his sidearm, then to his combat knife. Kervin fought beside him, the Althari's energy blade carving through enemies with desperate efficiency. Megan covered their flanks, her weapon spitting fire until the barrel glowed hot. Danny worked through the chaos, his hands steady despite the battle raging around him. He placed each charge with precision, calculating blast angles and structural weak points. When he finished, he armed the detonator and shouted that they had 2 minutes to evacuate. The team ran for the exit. Behind them, the Chromari swarm realized what was about to happen. The Queen Node's psychic scream echoed through every bioship connected to it. Warriors threw themselves at the fleeing humans with suicidal desperation. Aaron was the last one into the tunnel. A Chromari warrior grabbed him from behind. Kervin turned back, driving his blade through the creature's thorax. The two of them ran together as the timer counted down. 30 seconds, 20 seconds. The tunnel exit was ahead. They could see sunlight. Aaron pushed Kervin forward. The young Althari stumbled and fell through the exit. Aaron was right behind him when the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the cavern with devastating force. The Queen Node died, and with it, the connection to millions of bioships. The extraction ship pulled Aaron Webb's team off Draken 4 with only minutes to spare. The planet below was in chaos. Millions of Chromari bioships hung motionless in the sky. Their connection to the Queen Node severed. They drifted like dead leaves, no longer coordinated, no longer dangerous. Across 3 star systems, the same thing was happening. The death of one Queen Node had freed entire sectors from the swarm's control. Aaron sat in the medical bay of the extraction ship, burns covering his arms and back. He had barely made it out of the tunnel before the explosion. Megan Foster sat beside him, her flight suit torn and stained with Chromari blood. Kervin was in the next bed, unconscious but stable. The young Althari had taken a hit protecting Sam during the evacuation. Danny Rush and Sam Porter were the only team members without serious injuries, and even they looked exhausted. The news of their success spread through the Allied forces like wildfire. General Rodriguez addressed the entire fleet from her command ship. She spoke about sacrifice and courage. She spoke about Aaron Webb, who had stayed behind to ensure his team escaped. She said his final transmission would become the rallying cry for the rest of the war. His words were simple. He told them to show the galaxy how humans fight. He said that for every human lost, they would take 1,000 Chromari. But Aaron had survived. Barely, but he was alive. When he woke up 3 days later, Rodriguez was standing beside his bed. She told him he was being awarded the highest military honor Earth could give. He told her he was just doing his job. She smiled and said that was exactly why he deserved it. The Galactic Council formally requested Earth's full military integration. President Helen Morris addressed both Earth and the allied species. She said humanity would fight, not because of old grudges or new alliances, but because innocent lives needed protecting. She said that was who humans were. They fought for those who could not fight for themselves. The council chamber erupted in approval from every species present. Rodriguez became Supreme Commander with full authority over all Allied forces. She immediately began restructuring the military command. Human tactics were integrated into every battle plan. Officers from Kunzi, species trained alongside human instructors, learning to think differently, to fight differently. Commander Vekrin became her closest advisor, the bridge between human creativity and alien discipline. Commodore Lucas Grant was given command of the largest fleet ever assembled. 200 ships from 8 different species, all united under one goal. They were going to strike at the heart of Chromari territory. Intelligence had located the primary hive world, the place where the swarm had originated. At the center of that world was the primary queen, the first and largest queen node in existence. If they could destroy her, the entire Chromari swarm would collapse. Admiral Christine Ford commanded the vanguard. Her fleet would punch through the outer defenses and clear a path for the main assault. She stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as the fleet assembled around her. Ships of every size and design formed up in attack formations. Human destroyers flew alongside Althari cruisers. Zenith support vessels provided coordination. Krell heavy frigates added firepower. It was the most diverse fleet in galactic history. The journey to the Kromari homeworld took 6 days. They jumped through a dozen systems, fighting small skirmishes at each one. The swarm knew they were coming and tried to slow them down. It did not work. The Allied fleet carved through every defense, using tactics that the Kromari could not predict or counter. Human innovation combined with alien technology created a force that nothing could stop. Maya Singh led fighter squadrons through battles that would be studied for generations. She flew with a mixture of human and alien pilots, each one learning from the others. Her wingmen included an Althari named Vorin, who flew with reckless abandon, and a Zenith pilot called Mira, who could sense enemy movements before they happened. Together, they cleared the way for the capital ships. Nina Cortez was promoted to major and given command of the ground assault forces. Her Marines included humans, Althari, Krell, and representatives from 5 other species. They trained together, ate together, and learned to trust each other. Nina told them that on the ground there were no aliens or humans. There were only Marines, and Marines took care of each other. The Kromari homeworld appeared on their sensors like a dark cancer at the center of the galaxy. The entire planet was covered in organic structures, massive towers and tunnels that stretched into space. Bioships swarmed around it in numbers that made previous battles look like small skirmishes. This was where the swarm began. This was where it would end. Admiral Ford gave the order to attack. The Vanguard fleet hit the Kromari defenses with overwhelming force. Every weapon fired at once and space lit up with explosions. Bioships died by the thousands, but thousands more took their place. Ford had expected this. She had planned for this. The Vanguard was not meant to win. It was meant to draw the swarm's attention. Lucas brought the main fleet in from 3 different vectors. The Kromari found themselves fighting on multiple fronts, their hive mind struggling to coordinate responses to simultaneous attacks. Human ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and disappearing before the swarm could respond. Alien vessels provided sustained firepower, grinding through Kromari numbers with disciplined volleys. The battle lasted 18 hours. Ships burned and died on both sides. The Allied forces lost 40 vessels, hundreds of fighters, and thousands of brave soldiers. But they broke through. Ford's Vanguard cleared a path to the planet's surface. Lucas followed with the main fleet, providing orbital support. Now it was time for the ground assault. Nina's Marines launched from their transports in waves. Thousands of drop pods streaked through the atmosphere, each one carrying soldiers ready to fight. The landing was chaos. Kromari warriors covered every surface, millions of them all converging on the landing zones. Nina hit the ground running, her rifle in her hands and her Marines at her back. The primary queen was buried at the planet's core. To reach her, they would have to fight through miles of tunnels and billions of Kromari defenders. Nina knew the casualties would be horrific. She also knew they had no choice. This was the final push. If they failed here, the war would continue for decades. If they succeeded, it would end today. The Marines advanced through the Kromari structures, clearing them tunnel by tunnel. Kervin fought beside Nina, the young Althari, now a veteran of human-style combat. He had learned what courage meant to humans. It meant facing impossible odds and fighting anyway. It meant protecting your brothers and sisters in arms, even if it cost you everything. Dr. Victor Chen's weapons performed beyond expectations. The modified plasma rifles burned through Kromari armor like paper. Lisa Murphy's shield generators kept the Marines alive through attacks that should have killed them. Every piece of human innovation, every adaptation of alien technology, all of it came together in this final battle. They reached the primary queen chamber after 36 hours of continuous fighting. Nina had started with 10,000 Marines. She had 3,000 left. The chamber was a cavern so large they could not see the walls. The primary queen sat at the center, a mountain of flesh and chitin that had been growing for millennia. This creature had birthed the swarm that nearly destroyed the galaxy. Nina armed the thermonuclear device personally. The weapon was human-designed, built specifically for this moment. She set the timer for 5 minutes and ordered the evacuation. Her Marines pulled back, fighting every step of the way. Kervin stayed beside her, covering her retreat with his energy blade. They were the last ones out of the chamber, running as the timer counted down. The explosion was visible from orbit. Lucas watched from his command ship as a section of the planet's surface lifted into the sky. The primary queen died, and across the entire galaxy, the Chromary swarm lost cohesion. Bioships went dark. Warriors stopped fighting and simply stood motionless. The hive mind that had threatened civilization for 2 centuries was broken. The war was not over. Scattered Chromary clusters remained in distant systems, but without the primary queen, without central coordination, they were no longer an existential threat. They were a problem that could be managed, slowly cleared over time. The galaxy had been saved. Commander Vecren stood before the Galactic Council and formally apologized for the quarantine of Earth. He said fear had made them imprison humanity, and that fear had nearly cost them everything. If they had trusted humans 300 years ago, if they had worked together from the start, the Chromary might never have become a threat. He said the galaxy owed humanity a debt that could never be repaid. President Morris accepted the apology. She said humanity would join the council as full members and equal partners. But there would be conditions. No species would ever be quarantined again for being different. The galaxy needed diversity, especially in how they thought and fought. She said that isolated, the galaxy was weak. Together they were unstoppable. General Rodriguez added her own words. She said humanity would defend the galaxy, but they would do it their way. She said the council needed to learn that there was no single right way to do things. Every species brought something valuable. Humans brought innovation and adaptability. The Althari brought discipline and honor. The Zenith brought wisdom and coordination. Together they were stronger than any of them could be alone. The rebuilding began immediately. Worlds freed from Chromary control needed help. Refugees needed homes. The Allied forces, now a permanent coalition, spread across the galaxy to provide aid and security. Human engineers worked alongside alien architects. Human doctors learned from Zenith healers. The species of the galaxy were not just allies anymore. They were becoming something new. Captain Megan Foster stood in front of a classroom at the new Galactic Defense Academy. The students were a mix of humans and aliens, all young and eager. She told them about Aaron Webb's mission, about the sacrifice and courage it took to change the war. She told them about fighting alongside Curvin and learning that bravery was not unique to humans. Every species had heroes. She ended her lesson with a simple statement. Humans had a saying, "Humanity forget ya," but it was not about being superior or stronger. It was about never giving up, no matter how impossible things seemed. That was what humans offered the galaxy, not just weapons or tactics, but hope. The belief that even in the darkest moment there was always another choice. And sometimes that choice was to unleash the humans. Maya Singh flew patrol above Earth, her fighter cutting through the atmosphere with practiced ease. Below her, the planet was alive with activity. Cities rebuilt, forests regrown. Humanity had survived being frozen in time. They had survived the war. Now they were thriving. The galaxy would never be the same because humans were part of it now, and that was exactly how it should be.